Hello everyone, this is part 26 of What If Naruto Trains Seriously, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Daru's eyes darted around the destroyed residential district as he searched for a sign, any sign, of the current enemy. That chameleon summon they had been set to fight just disappeared several seconds ago after using some kind of transparency jutsu or something, and now he had no idea where it was. A good shinobi would normally be able to notice small discrepancies within the landscape that marked an invisible enemy, movements in the dirt, the sound of footsteps, a spike in K intent from someone who was about to attack. There were all manner in ways for a skilled shinobi to detect another even when they couldn't see their enemy. Not that this meant anything to Darui at the moment, who couldn't detect a thing, no footprints in the dirt, no sound of footsteps, no spike in K intent. It was almost as if their opponent had disappeared into thin air. Even with all his prodigious talent in the ninja arts, Darui couldn't detect his enemy's presence anywhere. Their enemy was simply better at hiding than he was at tracking. Good thing he wasn't a tracker ninja or he would be embarrassed. See, he spoke to his partner, his hands prepared to either start making seals or grab his sword. There was no telling what an enemy like this was capable of, so he wanted to be ready for anything. Can you sense him? I'm having a bit of difficulty, which was a mild way of saying he couldn't. There's just too much interference from the other summons and enemies running around Kumo. The strange thing is, all of them have the same exact chakra signature as the one we're fighting. That shouldn't be possible. Chakra signatures were unique to each individual. No two people had the same chakra signature. Even identical twins would have different chakra signatures. Are you sure you're sensing them right? Of course I'm sure. An annoyed vein throbbed on C's forehead at Darui questioning his sensing abilities. He was one of the best senses in Kumo while Darui couldn't sense his way out of a paper bag. His normally relaxed partner really had no right to talk. And I'm telling you that I'm sensing 9 chakra signatures that are all identical to each other. It's interfering with my ability to sense our enemy. Now stop questioning me. Alright, Darui mumbled his apology. No need to be so drab. Darui, behind you. The quick and sudden warning had Darui spinning around to face whatever C was warning him about. He was taken back for a second when he saw nothing, however, and this gave their invisible opponent the opportunity to get a clear shot at him before he even realized what was happening. Daru's eyes widened as something long and wrapped itself around his leg. He looked down, but couldn't see whatever was gripping him. He did, however, see the creases in his clothing as whatever wrapped around him tightened. His clothes were also getting a tad wet. A tongue. This is not good. Without warning and before he had time to see the invisible tongue off him, Darui was yanked into the air. Sking in annoyance as he tried to reach for his sword but kept failing due to how hard he was being shaken, Darui decided it would be easier to simply use one of his jutsu. Fortunately, he had a number of jutsu to choose from that would benefit him in a situation like this. Rabbit, dog, boar, ram, rat, Raten, Kangekia, lightning release, wave of inspiration. Channeling as much chakra as he dared to his hands, Darui felt the flow of his chakra reverse and polarize as it was changed into lightning-natured chakra. Garlands of crackling electricity arched and skittered across his hands like living creatures, coating and covering both appendages with the blue glow. Acting with speeds that most people would not expect from such a laid-back guy, Darui grabbed onto whatever was attached to his leg. He winced a bit as his own technique sent a shock through his system, but his pain was secondary to his primary objective. The lightning on his hands went down into the thing gripping him, lighting up the appendage which he could now see was definitely a tongue as it traced a path towards the owner of said pink appendage. The summons released a shrill scream as it became visible again due to the lightning chakra currently shocking it, breaking its concentration. It let Darui go, allowing him to fall back to the earth. As he fell, his body spun and righted itself so that he would land on his feet. At the same time, his hands were already going through several hand seals in preparation for launching another technique. Reigen Raikocho, lightning illusion flash of lightning pillar. While Darui was preparing his own jutsu, C had already gone through the hand seals needed to use one of his opening techniques. The lightning illusion flash of lightning pillar was a supplementary genjutsu that had no range, meaning it could be used at close, middle or long distance and still affect the enemy all the same. Like the name stated, it was a lightning release genjutsu that blinded people by making it appear as if a bright light was emanating from the one who cast it. It generated an electric light directly from C's body, which increased to blinding proportions within seconds after it's been cast. With his opponents blinded, C would then be able to cast more illusions on his enemies before they even realized it and finish them off while they were distracted. Or allow his partner to finish them off, as was the case here. Ranton, Riza Sakusu, Storm Release, Laser Circus. As Darui held his hands out in front of him, a halo of lightning chakra surrounded and spread out from them. The technique quickly encircled his hands before several beams shot out from the center of the halo where most of the chakra was being concentrated. The beams of light blue, electrified chakra tore through the air, all of them heading straight for the chameleon. In response, the summon's animal turned invisible just as the beams s through the spot where it was standing. They continued on to strike the ground not even a half a second later, obliterating a small chunk of the earth and causing smoke, dust and debris to get launched skyward as a miniature explosion occurred, further obscuring the area in a veil that Darui could not tell. Not that it mattered, really, because his sight was practically useless right now anyways. See, he called out, not taking his eyes off the cloud of dust as he looked for any sign of movement. While he wouldn't be able to see the chameleon summons, he would see the dust that got displaced in the air when a creature that big moved. Provided it hadn't been s apart by the L power of his storm release technique. It's to your left. Damn. Darui had been sure that he had gotten it with that last attack. They'd had the creature s to rights and hit it with one of their better combos. How had that thing managed to move fast enough to avoid his attack and not disturb all that dust in the air? He would have to think on it later. Right now, there were more important things to worry about and any hesitation on their part could easily end with their lives. Not wanting to present an easy target, Darui began moving as quickly as he could, dodging debris and bee alike as he began running in a zigzag pattern. It was a good thing he reacted to C's words so quickly. Not even a second after he had darted away did something invisible strike the ground hard enough to crater it. Had that hit him, it might have very well left him as a bee smear on the ground. Beginning more hand seals, Darui prepared to use another jutsu while C looked like he was already in the process of casting one of his genjutsus. Hopefully, his partner's illusion would distract that thing for a little longer than it did last time. Raiten, Unzeichi Nidazumu, Lightning Release, Jaded Edge 2 times Prism. Black lightning erupted from Daru's body, covering him in skittering garlands of dark electricity, which soon shot off his body and into the air. Higher and higher it soared until it was completely out of sight, seemingly the heavens. Not even a second later, the black lightning descended towards where C had last said the summon animal's location was, splitting off into 4 bolts that struck the ground in 4 different locations that when looked at from a bird's eye view would have been marked as the points of a prism. Not even a second later, the 4 points of black lightning shot inwards, striking at the center in between the 4 points. The explosion created from the attack was most impressive. A large, black ball of condensed lightning and chakra over 6 meters in circumference. It looked like all the power behind the attack was being contained within that sphere. Only a few small arcs of lightning managed to escape it, lashing outside of the sphere and striking the gravel, rocks and buildings with enough power to blast whatever it hit apart. When the attack down, there was a large crater sitting in the ground. You didn't get him, Darui. C called out, alerting the dark-skinned and normally laid-back man to the fact that their enemy was not S. He's moving again. To your left. TCH. This guy is really drab, Darui swore as he made to move. Before he could, something clamped down on his right shoulder. Whatever it was strong enough to easily L his clothing and B began pouring down from the wound, which looked to be multiple puncture marks of varying size. Biting back a scream of pain, Darui was lifted off his feet and tossed into a wall, which crumbled upon being forced to receive his weight and kicking up a lot of dust and smoke. A second later something managed to wrap around C's torso and arms, bringing them together and forcing them to constrict. The Jonin-level shinobi tried to break what could only be this summon's tongue, but it was surprisingly durable, and no matter how much muscle he put into his effort or how much chakra he pumped into his body, nothing seemed capable of breaking the insanely strong appendage that had managed to get a hold of him. The situation was made even worse because his arms were being held against his torso, meaning he couldn't use his hands, and without the ability to make hand seals, he couldn't use any of his jutsu. Even the simple kawarimi was out of his reach with his arms restricted like they were. Before his situation could become any more tenuous, Darui appeared before him in a blur, his right hand already gripping the sheath of his sword, which he yanked out quickly. Flowing from the action of unsheathing his blade, Darui continued swinging it downwards towards where he accurately guessed the invisible tongue was. His blade, charged with lightning chakra and glowing a light blue as electricity danced across its surface, into something, presumably the tongue, with impunity. There was an outraged shriek as one half of the tongue, the half that Darui had severed off from the rest of the summon's body, became visible. Darui smirked in satisfaction. It wasn't much, but it looked like they had found at least one weakness. Took you long enough, C grunted as he was finally free from his constraints. Shaking his arms, he tried to get feeling back into his arms. Did you have to wait so long to attack after using kawarimi? Sorry, Darui didn't sound all that sorry. I was waiting for the best opening to do the most damage. This guy's slippery. I haven't been able to get a lock on him, and since you haven't been casting any genjutsu on him, it's harder for me to hit him than usual. I have been casting genjutsu on him, C told his partner in annoyance, surprising Darui. It's just not that none of them seem to affect him. A summon animal that's immune to genjutsu. Darui sighed. This is so drab. Before C could scold his partner on using that stupid catchphrase of his, a loud shrill screech caught their attention. Craning their head up, the pair saw a giant bird with a drill beak heading towards them at speeds that almost seemed to break the sound barrier. The pair were soon forced to jump out of the way as the monstrous bird summon dropped several dozen eggs from its rear end that soon exploded against the ground. The large explosions from multiple detonation points not only sent up large amounts of earth and debris, but also caused hot winds to shoot upwards towards the pair of Kumogakur Junin. Both were jostled by the winds that lashed against them and pushed them further away from each other, separating them. As the two began to finally descend several dozen meters from where they had been originally, C found himself getting in the back by something invisible. Grr. Having already been falling, the Jonin of Kumo was sent towards the ground at an increased rate that made him look like a streak of white in the air. He soon ended up hitting a building face first, into and through the ceiling to what had, at one point, been a small house. He ended up lying face down on the ground, in a small crater just a little larger than his body, groaning in pain. While he had been hit with attacks that were a lot more painful, he would admit those were few and far between. His back was burning from where that thing had hit him. It felt like someone had taken sledgehammer to his spine. To top it off, he had practically belly flopped through that roof and the concrete of the floor. He likely had bruises on his bruises. He tried to push himself up, but all he managed to do was turn himself over so that he was lying on his back. When that happened, his eyes widened as they met a pair of Rinnegan eyes set within a man with long, orange hair. C was pulled to his feet by the man before being forced onto his knees. A hand was placed upon his head and the Kumo Jonin found himself incapable of moving. No matter how hard he struggled, or how much his mind told him to attack this man, he wasn't capable of doing anything other than kneeling there. It was like his body had completely frozen up. Where is the Jinchuriki for the Hachibi? Asked the man as C's mind screamed at him to move. He didn't say anything that would betray the location of the Raikage's adoptive brother. He was one of the Fourth's most loyal shinobi, and he would never betray his leader. Too bad for him the human path did not need to hear him speak. I see, so the Hachibi Jinchuriki is currently residing at a place called Unreikyo. C's eyes widened in both shock and fear. He was an intelligent ninja, preferring to analyze his opponents and come up with a plan before engaging. A shinobi like him was easily able to read between the lines and realize that this man had just read his mind. But how was the question? Was this an ability granted to him by the Rinnegan? The legendary Dujutsu was certainly one of mystery. What very little text existed on the Rinnegan only spoke of its ability to control all 5 main elements and that it was a power originally used by the legendary Rikudo Sennin. Everything else from its abilities to its origins were wrapped in a veil of mystery. These questions and more fled from C's mind, as did everything else seconds later when the man pulled his hand away, taking the Kumo Junan's soul with it. Zox. He blitzed towards the spiky-haired Rinnegan wielder, his body moving so fast it did not even leave a blur. One moment he was standing several meters away, the next he was right in front of Pain, his left arm extended and covered in the electricity from his lightning armor as he prepared to strike the man who had dared attack his village with a lariat. Just before E's attack could touch Pain, the Raikage once again found himself being sent sailing backwards, only this time the attack was even more powerful than before. The last time the attack had hit him, it had felt as if a strong force was pushing him back. This time it felt like his entire body had just taken one of Senju Tsunade's legendary punches without having his lightning armor protecting him, only instead of a concentrated area like his stomach or face, it felt like he had been hit by the fist of a giant. Rather than ending up buried under a pile of rubble, staring at a ceiling of a home he had been busted through, the attack was powerful enough that he was blasted through several buildings, tumbling end over end like a rag doll before managing to right himself. His feet soon skidded along the ground as he was forced to channel chakra into them in order to stop his backwards momentum. Even then, he ended up skidding back for several more feet, leaving 2 long trenches where his feet had been dragged through the ground to signify his passing through. Standing to his full height, he frowned as he tried to figure out what had just happened. The man before him hadn't even moved an inch, he had him to rights, and yet, somehow it was him who had been blasted away like he was a 50-pound weakling. Unfortunately, he had never been a very deep thinker, especially when in battle. He was the kind of guy who relied more on his instincts than anything else when in combat. Which was sad because right now he couldn't make heads or tails of what just happened to him. All he knew was that this guy apparently had some kind of special jutsu that he used to shove him away with the kind of strength expected from Senju Tsunade, and he didn't even lift a finger to do it. For those who knew the Raikage, they knew that he was hot-headed and easily angered, especially when something happened that he didn't understand. Right now, he was just not getting how this guy had been able to launch such a devastating attack on him without even making so much as a twitch. It was even worse than when he faced Minato and the bastard managed to dodge his fastest attacks. Naturally, he decided to charge at the man again so he could wipe that blank look off the idiot's face. Of course, he wasn't stupid enough to charge right in from the front. No, while the 4th Raikage was quick to anger and even quicker to action, he was still an intelligent man with a keen sense for battle and tactics. This time he came in from behind the man. He decided to go with something simple. An iron kuro. Meanwhile, while his hand was clawed and ready to grip the back of his enemy's head, he was going to observe his opponent and see if he could not determine some kind of weakness to whatever technique was being used against him. Once again it happened. Just as he was about to hit Pain with his devastating attack, the man seemed to have sensed his approach and quickly reacted by ducking under his iron kuro, spinning around to face him. This time, Pain held out both hands towards him, and again, he felt himself getting propelled backwards at incredible speeds. This time, he was prepared for it, however, and when he felt himself getting launched backwards, he began to crank up the juice and added more power to his lightning armor. Soon, the two powers began a fight for dominance that neither seemed capable of winning. The Raikage, with speed maxed out beyond what most humans should be capable of accomplishing, was unwilling to give an inch even though keeping his body running at such a high level was beginning to put a strain on his muscles and bone structure. On the other hand, Pain seemed completely emotionless as he continued pumping more and more chakra into his attack. It was a battle of attrition, with neither side willing to give the other an inch yet both wanting the other to lose. In a battle such as this, the one with the strongest will, or just the one who was more stubborn, would be the victor. He was one of the most stubborn bastards anyone would ever see. With a final roar of defiance, the 4th Raikage managed to break the stalemate. It seemed that Pain could not hold whatever technique he had been using for very long before it just stopped working. On the other hand, he could use his lightning armor for as long as he wanted, though the longer he used it the bigger the strain was on his body. Still, it was a small price to pay for finally getting a good hit on the bastard who had destroyed most of his village. Because there was no more resistance in the form of whatever power Pain had used to try and push him away, E's body followed the laws of physics. The speed at which he had been running had already been quite outstanding, and the only reason he had not moved was due to pain exerting an equal amount of force to keep him in place. Without that, the fourth Raikage not only shot forward and closed the distance incredibly quick, he did so in less time than it took to blink an eye. This time, there would be no way for the Rinnegan-wielding bastard to dodge his attack. He found his body halted when something sharp and painful hit him in the stomach. His body folded over the offending object as it ground against his lightning armor, which protected him from most of the damage whatever had him would have done, though it did nothing to prevent the blunt force trauma of having something rammed into his guts. Grabbing the offending object as he folded around it, the Raikage let out a panic roar of anger and pulled whatever was on the other end to him. He soon discovered that the thing trying to ell his stomach was a long, prehensile-like, serrated tail, and that the person on the other end was a really unusual-looking bastard with 6 arms and 3 faces. Not that this person's looks mattered to the guy was either way. The strange 3-faced man soon came into contact with E's lightning-infused fist as it against his C. The fourth Raikage did not have the incredible chakra-enhanced strength of Senju Tsunade, but with his lightning armor, that really didn't matter. Under the incredible power and strength granted to him through this technique, this strange new enemy may as well have been made of paper. Even though it was only a single attack, Asura found itself being completely destroyed by the lightning-coated fist to his C. His body literally exploded into thousands of shards and gizmos, revealing that he was actually some kind of robotic doll similar to, but nothing at all like the puppets of Sunagakur. As pieces of his body scattered and bounced along the ground, his head hit the dirt several meters away and rolled to a stop next to Pain, who had finally moved away from his original position. That was a very attack, Pain admitted as he stared down at his Asura path with emotionless eyes. He looked back up at the Raikage to see him huffing and puffing in anger. I dare say that would have killed me had it hit. It was supposed to kill you, you bastard. He growled in annoyance and anger. He had been so close to finally showing this guy why he shouldn't have attacked his village when that Jaka had shown up out of nowhere. And just who the hell was that guy anyways? Some kind of robotic puppet. These Akatsuki freaks were the weirdest bunch he had ever seen. I am not one to be done in as easily as that, Pain stated, though I do applaud you for your effort. Before he could make any kind of retort, or just attack the man, which he had planned on doing, another person appeared before him. This one was a man with a pudgy face, the same orange hair as the other two and the same Rinnegan eyes. What the hell? E's eyes widened. What the hell was going on here? The Rinnegan was supposed to be a legendary doujutsu that was so rare only the Rikadu Sennin was said to have possession of it. Now he had met not 1, not 2, but 3 people who all had the Rinnegan. What the F was going? In his surprise, he could not react in time when the Predator path grabbed onto him and began to drain him of his chakra. The crackling electricity that surrounded his body soon dispersed as the chakra he put into the technique was absorbed by this new enemy. Thankfully, the act of having his chakra drained was enough that he finally managed to gather his wits and used the immense strength granted to him through years of lifting weights in his office to break Predator's hold on him. This was followed by a powerful headbutt that had the Rinnegan bearer stumbling backwards. Rather than do what most shinobi would do in this situation, which was jump backwards to put some distance between them and bombard the enemy with long-range ninjutsu, he did the exact opposite and grabbed this new guy by the face after making his hand into the shape of a claw. Iron Kuro. Lifting Predator up by his face, the Raikage barely gave the path a second to realize its situation before him down head first into the gravel. The results were very pleasing. Predator's head was literally crushed underneath the clawed hand. Even without his lightning armor active, he was still someone with immense physical strength as suggested by his powerful frame. Bansho Tenon, heavenly attraction of all creation. Before he could even think of attacking Pain again or congratulating himself on his K, he was quite suddenly jerked off his feet and sent flying towards the Deva path. His eyes widened as he moved closer and closer to the man who had his hand outstretched towards him as if beckoning him over. The move had been so unexpected that there was very little he could do to counter against it. Due to the force being exerted on him, he could not bring his hands up to use even the most basic of jutsu, and because his feet were nowhere near the ground, he was not even capable of channeling chakra to the bottom of them, so he would stick to the ground. He was, for lack of a better term, a sitting duck. At least, that's what Pain thought. With determination flowing through his veins, he did not try and fight the pull on his body, which would have been an exercise in futility anyways. Instead, he watched as the man using the strange technique that seemed capable of attracting and repelling objects pulled him closer and closer. It was a good thing he was used to moving at such high speeds. Because his eyes were well adjusted to spotting fast-moving objects, the fourth Raikage was able to see Pain pull out some kind of black metal rod and pull his arm back in preparation to S him. Not that he would ever allow such an obvious attack to do him in. He was not only a kage, but one that specialized in close-range combat. Taijutsu was his forte, and only someone like Senju Tsunade, Namikaze Minato and now Namikaze Naruto had ever been able to match him in that arena. This Pain character seemed to be primarily a ninjutsu user. Granted, he had only displayed 2 abilities so far, but it would not surprise me if the man only had a few more centered around his ability to attract and repel objects. What's more, he had managed to catch Pain off guard with his taijutsu. It had only been thanks to the timely intervention of those other 2 that this Rinnegan wielder had been saved. When Pain thrust the metal rod forward to SE through the stomach, the Raikage was prepared. Activating his lightning armor not even a second after the attack was made in order to increase his physical prowess and speed to incredible levels, E's left hand lashed out, grabbed hold of the black metal rod, snapped it in half, then launched a powerful right hook at Pain's face. This time, there was no path around to save Pain from getting hit this time. Like the sound of thunder cracking against the ground, the noise from E's lightning-enhanced fist striking Pain's face was loud enough that it caused the earth to rumble. The punch did more than just make a lot of noise, however, it also shattered Pain's jaw and sent him flying backwards in the same manner he had been doing to E for the past few minutes. Like a lightning jutsu gone out of control, his body spinning like a top, Pain struck the ground, digging up massive amounts of rock and dirt as he created a large trench along the path he was thrown. He struck one of the buildings in his way, going straight through it and coming out the other side. The building collapsed in on itself like a house of cards and still Pain traveled further. The Raikage glared at where he had last seen his enemy. He was sure that would put an end to him. He had struck out with everything he had in that last attack. Not even someone of Tsunade's strength would have been able to survive a hit like that without being liquidized. Nodding to himself, the Raikage prepared to find the rest of the enemies attacking the village and protect his people before his entire body froze. His eyes widened as he felt his chakra being leached from him. Looking down, he found Preta gripping his calves tightly. His lightning armor went out as he no longer had the chakra to sustain it. He was still alive. He had been sure he'd K the bastard. He could even see its face was still caved in where he had crushed it beneath his hand. With a growl, the Raikage made to yank one of his legs out of the idiot's grip and stomp on his head when an indescribable pain his abdomen. He blinked several times as he stared down at the B-tip of a serrated tail. Still in shock, he craned his end to look behind him and saw the mechanical enemy he had annihilated a little while ago standing behind him, a grin on all 3 faces. What the F? He grunted as he went down to a knee. He tried to stand again, but the chakra being drained from him by the Preta path was leaving him incredibly weakened. All he could do was shake and heave as he tried to push his body beyond what it was capable of. What an amazingly strong attack. He looked up, disbelieving as he saw Pain walking back towards him looking no worse for wear. There didn't seem to be any damage done to him at all. You truly live up to your Raikage. An attack of that caliber would have K most people. He coughed as B began welling up in his lungs. How are you still alive? A pointless question, Pain said in his usual monotone voice. There is no need to answer it when you are going to be S soon. He growled as he tried to stand again, but was too weakened. His vision was beginning to blur from a lack of chakra and B loss. You fought valiantly, but in the end it wasn't enough. You now know Pain, but it is too late. I cannot let one as dangerous as you live. A flash of black was all that the Raikage saw before a rod of black metal was S all the way through his N and out the back. He gurgled as he bled out, his eyes glazing over and his body slumping. A single second passed, then 2. Finally, the Raikage stopped breathing. Pain looked at the body of the Raikage, then raised his head to look at the rest of the village. There was no more need to stay here now that he had the location of the Hachibi Jinchuriki. All that was left to do was use this village as an example of what would happen to those who defied God. Using his powers to lift himself into the air, Pain floated high above the hidden village. From his bird's eye view he could see how much damage he had caused. More than half the village was nearly destroyed. Not that it mattered. This village wouldn't be around at all for much longer. Raising his hands high above his head, Pain's gaze sharpened as his chakra surged in preparation for his technique. In less than a second, Kumogaku would be no more. Shinra Tensei. Zox. Within the darkened bedroom that was lit only by the few streams of light that managed to sneak in through the curtains of a nearby window, Namika's Naruto felt himself begin to stir. It was a slow stirring, the kind where one still felt a bit groggy from the events of yesterday and needed a few minutes to adjust from that moment of restful peace to complete awareness. Blinking several times as his eyes adjusted to the darkened room, the young man took absent note of the decor. He easily recognized the master bedroom of the Namika's estate. He also easily recognized the female body snuggled deeply into his side. Smiling slightly, Naruto reached out with a hand and began to gently run his hands through Conan's beautiful blue hair. Rather than fan out like the other girl's hair did, Conan's was too short for that and thus was arrayed in a typical bedhead fashion, with numerous strands sticking up chaotically sort of like his own. An amusing thought escaped him as he wondered if their children would look like that, their mother's hair color but his style. He shook the thought off. While an appealing thought, children weren't something they could afford right now. Not with Akatsuki, and more importantly, that guy claiming to be Uchiha Madara still on the loose. The last thing he wanted was for his wife and child to be used as a hostage. Zox. Light banter continued throughout the rest of breakfast as Conan and Yugao learned a bit more about each other. They seemed to get along fairly well, which Naruto was glad for. The last thing he wanted was for these two to start fighting each other like Mei and Yugito had when they first met. Dealing with that kind of situation once was more than enough for him. Near the end of breakfast, the doorbell to his estate rang out. Frowning, Naruto created a shadow clone the plates and wash them off while he, Conan and Yugao walked over to the door. The person on the other end was an Anbu member with a lizard mask covering his face. When he saw Naruto standing there, he snapped off a salute. Namika-san, Hokage-sama has requested you in her office. Did she say why? I am not privy to her reasons, sir, the Anbu replied dutifully. Naruto nodded, figuring that the woman probably just wanted to speak with him. He looked over at Conan and Yugao, both of whom understood his expression. Don't worry about us, Naruto, Yugao said. I'm off duty right now, so I can use this time to show Conan around Konoha while wait for you to get back. Naruto smiled at the pair, before turning back to look at the Anbu. Lead the way, Lizard-san. The Anbu nodded as he grabbed Naruto by the sleeve of his shirt. Together, the two disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Zox. Tsunade leaned back against her chair, sipping at a saucer of sake in order to keep from becoming a nervous wreck. These past few days had been very hectic since Naruto came back from the successful mission to capture Sasuke. She had tried working up the courage to tell them about their relationship but Jiraiya's battle with Pain had interfered. Then she had to personally keep Jiraiya from on him. Even then, he was still left with just a single arm and had been put into a coma. Now there was nothing left getting in her way. Jiraiya was out of danger, Sasuke had been retrieved. Pain was an ever-looming threat but not one they could deal with right now. Even the paperwork was complete, which was a rarity for her. All of this led to one thing. It was time to tell Naruto of their relationship to each other. She was nervous, frightened even, but he deserved to know. She had sent an Anbu out 15 minutes ago, so all that was left to do now was wait for Naruto to arrive. Which was why she was sitting there, contending herself with sake so that the passing of time did not increase her nerves. If she got any more nervous, she wasn't sure she could go through with it. A brief wind kicked up, followed by a swirl of leaves. A few seconds later, Naruto appeared alongside the Anbu she had sent to get him. You called, Bar-chan. Yes, I did, Tsunade said, causing Naruto to frown. Thank you for getting here so promptly, she informed the Anbu, who gave a nod and vanished upon using the Shunshin again. Sit down, Naruto. Still looking a little unsure, Naruto did as told and took a seat in one of the two chairs in front of the desk. I'm sure you're wondering why I called you here, Tsunade said after a moment before taking a quick sip of her sake. Naruto, still confused, nodded. A while back we managed to acquire some information on your B test that can and likely will cause a good deal of commotion if it ever gets out. It also changes a good deal between us. Then what I have is a bloodline? Asked Naruto. Yes, Tsunade said, it is a bloodline. I believe it came from a combination of your Uzumaki B and your father's B. My old man, Naruto frowned. What does he have to do with this? As far as I am aware, he was not a part of any clan. And as far as we were aware, he was not either, Tsunade said. Recent information from your B test, however, has shed some light on things. Namikaze Minato was an orphan as far as anyone knew. There are no records of his parents in any of our files, however, I am beginning to believe that is because they were stricken from his profile by Sarutobi-sensei. It must be pretty important if Hokage Ajisen needed to erase the information, Naruto noted. It is. Tsunade took a deep breath, then blew it all out in a sigh. I'm not going to beat around the bush, Naruto. When we ran the B test, we did a much more extensive test than the one to simply see if you had a bloodline. This test showed us a number of information that goes beyond blood type and genetics. Through it, we would have been able to find out who your grandparents and great-grandparents were so long as we had a sample of their blood on record. I take it this has something to do with my grandparents, then. Naruto frowned in thought as he was finally given a bit more information on what this meeting was about. Just one of them, Tsunade informed him, your grandfather on your father's side. You see, I discovered that your grandfather is, in fact, my deceased younger brother, Senju Nawaki. Naruto's mouth dropped. Naruto, your father was actually my nephew, which makes you my grandnephew. With the bomb dropped, Tsunade waited for the other shoe to fall. She expected a number of things to happen after Naruto recovered from his shock. Anger at leaving him alone for so long, rage at how he was treated by the villagers. She expected him to shout at her, to yell and scream about how she should have been there for him, and she felt he would be right to do so. Clearly, she let her own anxiety get the best of her. You do know that you can no longer complain about me calling you Bar-chan, right? Tsunade blinked. What? Naruto grinned. You can't get upset when I call you Bar-chan anymore. Technically speaking, you kind of are my Bar-chan since we're related and all. Naruto, now it was Tsunade's turn to gawk. I just told you that you are and I are closely related and all you can say is that I can't complain about you calling me Bar-chan. So, Naruto looked at her, confused. I don't really see your point. This doesn't change anything. Doesn't change anything. Tsunade parroted in shock. Aren't you? You should be mad. You're related to me and I wasn't there for you. I've known about this for months, but kept it from you because of my own fear and selfish desire to keep the status quo. I'm still not seeing the problem, Naruto admitted with a shrug. As far as I can see, you only found out after I returned to the village, which means you did not know we were family before then. I'm not sure how I can blame you for not being there for me when you didn't even know we were family. So you're not mad at me? Asked Tsunade, still reeling from shock. Of course not, Naruto scoffed, being upset at you for not knowing something is stupid. Why would I blame you for being ignorant? That would be like how the villagers blamed me for everything the Kyuubi did when I was younger. Thank you, Tsunade whispered, trying not to let the tears fall from her eyes. Naruto rolled his eyes. Don't get all wishy-washy on me. Aren't you old hags supposed to be tough? His question was answered when Tsunade threw an empty sake bottle at his head. Watch it, brat. Tsunade scowled. I may let you get away with calling me Bar-chan from now on, but there is no way I'm going to let you call me an old hag without suffering the consequences. Geez, you're so violent, Naruto muttered. Aren't the Senju supposed to be peace-loving hippies or something? Tsunade snorted. Only when you don't piss us off. Then we become the devil incarnate. Right, right. Naruto nodded his head, pleased to see that he had dispelled the aura of doom and gloom surrounding Tsunade. Now, this information is interesting and all, but I do have a question. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Which is, how did Nawaki have a kid? Wasn't he, like, 12 or something? 13? Tsunade corrected, and yes, he was too young to have a child. However, Orochimaru was his sensei. And you believe that he may have taken samples of Nawaki during that time. Or sometime after, Tsunade replied. I don't want to believe that he was experimenting that early on, But it's not outside of the realm of possibility that he injected a woman with Naruto's seed and tried to observe her when she got pregnant. It's also very likely she is at childbirth, as there are no records of who Minato's mother was. She was likely a random civilian that Orochimaru had selected for that very same reason. Less chance of people noticing her that way, especially during times of war. Makes sense. Naruto nodded his head. Naruto, Tsunade began again, a tremor in her voice. Are you really okay with this? Naruto looked confused, but then shrugged. I don't see why not. I mean, we're already pretty much family, right? Might as well make it official. I see. Tsunade had to smile at his words as she remembered another reason she liked the blonde so much. He didn't just remind her of her little brother and late lover, he was also an amazing person capable of accepting others no matter what and always tried to look on the bright side of things. She was about to say more, but before she could even open her mouth, the door to her room was blasted open and one of her ninja was leaning against the door jamb, huffing and puffing like he had just run a marathon. You had better have a good reason for barging in like this. Tsunade scowled at the man, who shrank a bit but did not waver. It's Kumogakur, the man rasped, his breathing still heavy. We just received news that it was destroyed by Akatsuki. What? That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.